Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Simpson. How are you today?
I am very well. You look very sunny as usual, which is awesome. Good to see you. We've got an interesting guest today, Shannen Tune, Chef Tune. I met Shannen Tune at a food hall at Finn Hall when we did food hall. It was good to meet him. I've since kept in touch with him. He's a guy who just has a lot going on. We've had a couple of discussions recently about ghost kitchens and different things. He's basically doing all of them right now. He's got a brick and mortar store. He's got a food hall location. He has a ghost kitchen in a ghost kitchen facility, which is different kind of than the ghost kitchen we talked about last week. And he's also doing even more stuff. Like they do meal service. He does chef in-home cooking for people. He does cooking classes with Google. He's just got an awful lot going on. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk to him about all the
Yeah,
different things he has going and how they operationally work and which ones are and which ones aren't. So let's
yeah, that's great.
bring him on and we will get rolling. It's coming on now. So yeah, anxious to see him. Hey Shannon, good morning. You are with us. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. There you are. Good morning. Thanks for coming on today. We really appreciate your time. You got. I was introducing you, telling everyone you might be one of the. You've got more going on than most people do. It's kind of amazing to watch all the different things that you're doing, which is awesome, and it inspires me to get busy and.
To
You
do
seem to
more.
always come out with something new every
Yeah.
month or so. There's Shannon's doing this. So, which to start all that off, I really want to just ask you, where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I am originally from New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey. I lived in Central Jersey for my entire childhood.
Whereabouts in Central Jersey? Being a Jersey
South
guy
Pla-
myself.
South Plainfield.
Okay. I grew up in the south part of the state, Haddon Heights. I grew up in Haddon Heights and the
Okay.
Cherryville area down south.
Okay. Very familiar.
Yeah.
How did you end up in the restaurant business?
I ended up in the restaurant business. I had an affinity towards cooking very early. Um, my mother's a really great cook. My grandmother's a really great cook. We are a family that cooks, and I started very early. My mother says she can remember me having an aptitude towards it when I was like 3. And she tells the story all the time. She said one weekend she made a cake for a friend, and I watched her make the cake. The next week, she said she was making the same cake for another friend. I asked if I can help her. She said yes. Um, and when she went to the bathroom and she came back, and I had pulled out all the ingredients that she had used the last week, and I had them lined up in order of how she used them. And then she realized at that point that, oh, he's really into this. Um, so like she started to allow me to be in the kitchen with her more. And by the time I was maybe 8, 9 years old, second, third grade, I started cooking dinner for the family. My mother worked, both my parents worked for the post office, and my mother had an overnight schedule. So that left my dad to do the cooking sometimes. And my dad, he has many great attributes, but cooking is not one of them. And I think my dad had made spaghetti and he burnt spaghetti. And I grew up in a very strict household, and it was you eat what we make or you don't eat. If you make a fuss about it, you're getting a belt. And that night I said, you know what? I'm gonna take this whooping and I'm not eating this. And then the next day I made dinner and it was edible, it was good. And then that kind of became my role. And I just started cooking from that point on. And then more and more as I got older, it went from hot dogs and hamburgers to fried chicken to pasta dishes. And by the time I was in high school, I had really kind of like got into it. And I was taking my home ec classes, and I started working in the restaurant world via hotels. So my very first real cooking, I mean, I'd done catering before that, but my really first industry job was working at a Holiday Inn in South Plainfield, and that's where it kind of all started. And I was able just to kind of see the different roles in the food and beverage world. I started in the front of the house and then went to the back of the house. And then the chef there, he had went to culinary school, and he really started talking to me about going to different culinary schools, and just started from there.
Did you go to
That's
culinary
very
school?
interesting. That's very interesting. Not many people, not many of us, when put with the choices of eating or you would pick up and cook it yourself, and do
Yeah,
it at such a young age. That's telling me something about you. Your love for what you do. You started at a very early age.
yeah. I've always known what I wanted to do. It was, I think, kind of sets me apart from a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell us more about your career. So you started at that Holiday Inn. Where did you end up from there?
So I worked at Holiday Inn for like 4 years. I started like my sophomore year in high school, and I finished it through. I finished there through high school, and then I started culinary school. I went to Middlesex Community College first, and at the time that was the #3 culinary school in the country. Right there in my own community college, and I did that for. I went for about a year, and I realized for myself that I knew if I stayed put in Jersey, I wasn't going to achieve very much. So I ended up applying to Johnson and Wells. And the funny thing about it is that when I graduated high school, I had a full scholarship to Johnson and Wells,
Oh,
but I
wow.
had no desire to go to college at that time. I was in like the Future Homemakers of America club in my school, and so it was a it wasn't even a hospitality. It was like a homemaker club, and 99% of the people were in there for like fashion and design, and by default, Johnson and Wells gives them, because the Johnson and Wells main campus at the time had a fashion and design course. So they had, one person out of the 20 girls that were in there, one girl got a degree to go for the fashion, and there was no one else who applied. Well, I didn't even apply. Um, there was no one else who was interested in a culinary degree that they granted to my school, and I got it. And like, I kid you not, I never filled out one piece of paperwork to get this scholarship, and I got it full ride. But then I was just like, I really just had no desire to go to college. Even when I went to community college started in September. I applied in August. Like, I just didn't really care. And then lo and behold, a year later, I applied to go to Johnson and Wells, and then now I have to pay full price. So I went to Johnson and Wells. I just really needed to get out of my environment in Jersey. I wasn't in a bad environment. It's just that no one around me, my peers, they weren't making any strides in their life. Like, they weren't, no one had figured out what they wanted to do yet. And I would go to school and then just not go to class. I was repeating I wasn't a very good student in high school, and I was repeating that in college. And I said, I need to do something different. So I applied to Johnson Wells. I get in. Um, uh, all of this is a shock to my parents. They don't know I'm planning this. And I get in. I got some scholarships, some financial aid. I remember I fell short like a couple $1,000 for my tuition. And this is when my parents was like, oh, he's serious. I was really big into motorcycles, and I had a motorcycle. And when they saw me sell my motorcycle for me to go to college, they're like, oh, Shannen is really serious.
Wow.
So I did that. I was able to pay for my first year. And I get in, I go to the Virginia Beach campus, because I wasn't going to Rhode Island, because I'm not going anywhere colder than New Jersey. And I was in the Virginia Beach campus for 2 years. I got my associates, and then I decided to go on to. My plan was to get my bachelor's. So I transferred to the Miami campus, and so I had like one more semester to do. I transferred to Miami campus. I start that last semester, and this is where I meet my wife, Stacy. We met in class in Miami. Um, and I did, I finished that semester, and towards the end of that semester, I got a job working for the Mandarin Oriental in Miami. And I started working there, and I was like, oh, this is a whole nother world of high-end culinary things I didn't even know existed. So I said, all right, let me take a semester off. Like I finished my bachelor's, my associate's. I said, let me take a semester and then just work. And once I did that, I was like, oh, I'm gonna learn more here than I will in school. So I never went back, and that I think it's one of the best decisions I made was that like I never needed a bachelor's in culinary. I needed just to work under great chefs. So that kind of just started my culinary ascension. 'Cause right out of school, I got a great job. I was working with some of the best in the industry, and I got to see more food and different culinary techniques and cultures. Working with that high end luxury hotel group than I would have 5 more years of school and 10 other years of working.
Yeah, no doubt. And
It's
then
an
how
interesting
did
program.
that from there you ended up how did you get onto the Chop Show? Because you went directly
Oh,
from that, right?
no, no, no,
No,
no, no.
there's more.
That Mandarin Oriental job was 20 years ago. I did Chopped 5 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I was
So
thinking.
from from the Mandarin Oriental, I worked at the Mandarin Oriental Miami for I want to say 2.5 years.
Yep.
Me and my wife, we get married while working there. She also worked for the Mandarin Oriental, but at a different property. She worked at the Turnberry Isles one. Um, uh, right after we got married, they were opening the Mandarin Oriental New York um, property, and my chef was promoted to the executive chef of that hotel, and he asked me to come. It was like a turning point in my life because at first I didn't want to go. I was just like, I'm from there. I don't want to go back. Miami's freaking great. The weather's beautiful,
Yeah.
whatever. And then he had like a very long conversation about what me working in New York, what that would do for my career.
Yeah.
Um, and then the fear set in. I was like, you know, he said it's going to be tough. It's going to be very challenging. When they say if you make it in New York City, you can make it anywhere. He said that's true, but it's not going to be easy and blah blah blah. So I thought about it, and every mentor I had at the time was like, yes, you need to do this. So I finally convinced, after begging and pleading and crying once, to my wife to get her to move to New York City. Because my wife, as you know, is from Jamaica. Miami's not that big of a difference. Moving to New York City was a huge change for her. It's way outside of her comfort zone, and she hates the cold. But I finally get her to go. We both go to New York City.
Did you live
And
inside? Did you live in the city, or were you living in Jersey and commuting in?
I lived in Queens. We lived in Astoria, so we commuted
Gotcha.
from Astoria. So it was like a 20-minute commute for both of us. We get there, and I just remember like our first day orientation, and specifically for the kitchen. For every one cook that they hired, they had 300 applicants.
Damn.
300 qualified applicants.
Wow.
And I was literally working with the best of the best in the city. It was a great learning experience because every single person who worked in the kitchen was 1,000 times better than me. So like I was already pretty humble at that time, but I had to really humble myself to just be like, all right, I almost don't deserve to be here. Like I would not have been, if I didn't already work for the company, I would not have been hired for this position. So but it was a great position to be in because I learned from everyone. Like, it just, I had to just be humble and take it sometimes because they weren't the nicest at all times.
Yeah.
But it matured me and helped me increase my culinary knowledge because these guys had already been cutting their teeth in the biggest, most fine dining restaurants in New York City. So I work at that restaurant. The restaurant I worked at was called Asiat. It was a French and Japanese restaurant, and I did that for about 2.5 years. After that point, I had risen to the point of where I wasn't going to rise anymore. Like, you know, I had learned all the stations. I had learned what I was going to learn at that restaurant, and it was time to move on. But I didn't want to leave the company. The Mandarin Oriental was by far one of the best jobs I've ever had, like by far. Like there's nothing else that has even come close. The culture of the company, the quality of the people they hire, like the way they treat you, nothing was better. And it kind of set me up later to when I own my own company. Like, all right, this is the level of how I want to treat people, what I want to provide for them, and so on and so forth. So at that point, they were planning on opening the Mandarin Oriental Las Vegas. And the same chef, he was like, hey, you know, I plan to go out there in a 2 or 3 years when they open it. How about you go out to Vegas now, get some experience, and then, you know, when it's time for us to open, we can hire you as a, you know, a banquet chef or a chef de cuisine or maybe even an executive sous chef, right? So I'm like, fine. So me and my wife, we moved from New York City to Vegas, and I worked in Vegas for 4 years, from Caesar's Palace, MGM Grand. I worked at the private non-gaming hotel called the Platinum, where for me is my first time doing molecular gastronomy. Is a molecular gastronomy themed restaurant, so that was something different from there. And then my last job in Vegas was working for the celebrity chef Carrie Simon at Cat House, and that was a crazy experience working in Vegas. But I learned so much from there, from operations to doing large scale events. My very first day working at Caesar's Palace, we did an event for 50,000 people.
Jesus.
And we had 50,000 people in 1 hour. So that was eye opening.
Scary.
Huh?
Very scary, I bet, you know, going.
It wasn't scary because I was just an observer. I was like, I was just like, so this is what happens. Yeah. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was my first day. I just got in where I could get in. And then I worked at Caesar's Palace, which was my worst job I ever had. It was awful. I learned a lot there because it was my first, like, New York was a union facility, but it didn't have the union mentality. When I got to Caesar's Palace, it was a union job that had a union mentality. The management at the time, the culture changed, but the management at the time treated the hourly employees like they were the enemy. Yeah. And it was vice versa. It was always us versus them. And I was management, and it was hard to manage people who had been treated wrong. Even though I walk in there with the best intentions, I am a reasonable person. Like, I'm not here to make your life difficult. I just want you to do your job. I want to help you do your job. I want to help you grow. But their mentality was different. Like, no, these guys are here to screw us. You're going to screw us too, blah, blah, blah. And it was a very tough year. I worked there for exactly 1 year. I'll never forget this. This was over 15 years ago. I started June 15th. I think it was 2003 or 4. And my last day was June 15th the next year. I worked there for 1 year exactly because I wanted to put my time in and then get out of there. And I went to MGM Grand after that, and it was the complete opposite. The management treated their hourly employees well. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yeah, there were certain rules and regulations that they had to follow. But like, I remember the executive chef, he was just saying, like, you know, time off. He said, if an employee requests time off, he does it within the guidelines that we set forth. So they say it's 2 weeks notice. He says, if you come to me and tell me you can't grant this person this time off, and they gave you the time, and we have all these extra, we have 5,000 hourly employees that can do the same job. If you tell me you can't do it, you have to really explain to me why. Because he said, if you can't, it's more of a you don't want to. You know what I'm saying? It might be an inconvenience to you to do it. But he's like, if they're doing the procedure if they're going through the procedure properly, why can't you do it?
Yeah.
You know,
The
because he said
default
I'd
was,
much rather,
yeah, the default
huh?
was to do it, not to put up a
Not to
roadblock.
not do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where when I was at Caesar's Palace, I mean, they would just say no just to say no. And that was like policy. Like I remember the first restaurant I worked at, it was called Viale. It was an Italian restaurant. It was a gourmet restaurant. They decided that they were going to reclassify the restaurant and make it a casual restaurant. It just, it wasn't doing enough business. But that had repercussions for the hourly employees. Like
Yeah.
if you were a gourmet cook, grill cook, right? And now they reclassified the place, that means that you could be losing your job,
Yeah.
or you'd have to go work somewhere else, or your schedule can change. Like there are so many things. It wasn't just like, oh, we're reclassifying the restaurant, and because you are this, because you have this role, you get to keep it. No, it's a union. So someone else who's a casual cook has more seniority than you can take your job if they want to.
Wow.
You know, and I was like, wow, this is like a major thing that people need to be aware of. To the law of the union rule, they only have to give their employees 1 week notice.
Jeez.
They knew 3 months ahead of time that they were going to do this. They gave them the minimum notice. I'm like, people have to find daycare. People didn't know if they were going to have a job. It created hysteria. And I was like, this wasn't necessary. So it just kind of, it was like I said, I met some great chefs there. I met some great hourly people there, but it just taught me like, yo, I never want to manage like this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's a humane way to do things,
Yeah.
and that wasn't humane the way they treated people. And the result was they got the bare minimum out of their employees.
Yeah.
MGM Grand, complete opposite. They treated people well, and the employees worked so much better.
Imagine that. Imagine
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Shannen went on mute there.
We lost you.
I got it.
There
I'm
you
back.
go. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what was I gonna say? At MGM Grand. So I'm at MGM Grand. The whole time I'm at Caesar's Palace, like it was also a very difficult thing. They hired me because I had this great background working for all these luxury places. But then after Viale, like they only would put me in casual dining restaurants. And for me, it was the first time I experienced racism. And it was they didn't have any chefs like of color that worked in fine dining restaurants. And I had relationships with some of the chefs who ran the fine dining restaurants, like Bradley Ogden. There's a chef, Sean Griffin. I think Adam Sobel, he was the chef of Geisha Bois at the time. They wanted me to work in their restaurants, but the powers that be wouldn't let me, even though I was qualified.
Wow.
And they told me if I wanted to work in those restaurants, I would have to like take a demotion and be a line cook, which in hindsight I should have done. I'd have been better off. So that's another reason why I worked at Caesar's Palace for just 1 year. I get to MGM Grand and they hired me to work in their casual restaurant with the promise that, hey, you do a good job, we'll let you go. Like, give us 3 months here, you do a good job, and we'll let you go to one of the fine dining restaurants. Fine. I go in there, I kill it for 90 days. And then the executive chef comes to me and he was just like, you're doing so good here, we can't let you go. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not what we discussed. Yeah. And he was like, look, I'll give you more money. Also too, at this point, I had just had a child, and at Caesar's Palace and MGM Grand, they're like, oh, he just had a kid. He won't quit. He has to do this. Right. They're dealing with a different animal with me. It's like, you're not going to force me. I at that point in my career, even then, I wasn't going to let someone else dictate to me where I went with my career. So after I had that conversation with a chef at MGM Grand, I was like, I thought about it, I talked about it to my wife, and I was like, yo, this isn't gonna work. Like, I can't do this. Like, I didn't work this hard to get to this point in my life
Yeah.
to be put somewhere I
Put
know,
down.
yeah, or it's just not gonna lead me where I want to go. You know what I'm saying? So because honestly, the route at the MGM Grand, the route that I was at, it would have led me to a higher paying job in MGM Grand. If you can manage a restaurant that does $1 million a day, you can be an executive
Amazing.
chef at a smaller hotel. You can, like those guys went on to be bigger things. It just wasn't the path that I was interested in at that time. So we had the conversation, and I thought about it for about a week, and I said, all right, let me look and see what else is out there. And during that time, I found the Platinum Hotel. I think my wife might have interviewed there first, and she told the executive. I think I found the job for my wife because she was looking to make a move, and then she got the job, and then she told the executive chef about me, and I interviewed with him. It's all happened in a week, and then he offered me the job for a sous chef at a molecular gastronomy restaurant. And it was an hourly position that paid like $20 an hour. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna make way more money and do the food I wanted to do. So I resigned at MGM Grant, and they were completely shocked. They thought no way I would be leaving. And I did that. And then the Platinum just opened up 1,000 more doors for me. I worked there for about 2.5 years. And I mean, we received every award you could receive in Biggs at the time. We were serving all the big name chefs. The food writers loved us. The food that we were doing there with the molecular gastronomy was still relatively new, at least in America, and we were killing it. And it was just an opportunity. The options were endless. If we could think it up, we were allowed to. We had the creative room to just do whatever we wanted to. The
As a
executive
chef,
chef.
that's got to be a great thing. That's got to be a tremendously empowering thing as a chef.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, literally, we would just sit around and think, what do we want to do? How can we transform this food experience? Like, there was no boundaries of what we could and could not do. And then once again, there I was surrounded by creators, like just people who just thought differently, and it trained me to think differently. And it was a great working experience. I also learned some lessons there. One of the one of the things I learned there is that when you get to that kind of food and it's trendy, trends don't last forever.
Yeah.
And sometimes those trends don't make money. So where we were killing it, winning awards, people loved us, we were only serving 20, 30 people a night in Vegas. And that wasn't gonna cut it.
Yeah.
So after 2 years, upper management was like, all right, guys, this is all cute and
Gotta
stuff, but we need to
change.
make money now. And they wanted to make changes. And at that point, I didn't want to make those changes. So we all of us, we all ended up leaving and finding other things. And at this point, I realized, all right, I have a responsibility as a husband and father to provide a more stable lifestyle for my family. And I can't be changing jobs every couple months. So I got hired on the Cat House. And this is also during the 2006 housing market crash.
Yeah.
The economy just not good. So I said I need to do something more casual, and I got to work with Carrie Simon and the other chefs over at Cat House, and it was a complete shift of responsibility. Like, like the kind of food that we were doing was very casual, but and Carrie Simon, Carrie Simon died a couple years ago of MS, but he was very like, hey, we're not what you were doing. We are very casual. We're not going to, push the envelope here. We're just going to serve good, consistent food. Right? He's the executive chef, the corporate person there. He's not there every day. The second he's not watching me and the other three chefs, we are pushing the envelope every day. And it was a great experience because I learned to walk that line of making gourmet upscale food that was relatable to the person who was visiting from Iowa.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So that was a different skill set that I learned at that point. And then I worked there for about a year, and then that was another casualty of the recession then. And then you know, they basically told me, they gave me a heads up, like, look, we're gonna be downsizing and we're no longer gonna need your position anymore. Fine. So I was like, all right, so now I'm on the look for a job again. But at this point, I'm in Vegas for 4 years. Me and my wife both hate Vegas now. I want to get out of there. So we start looking at other places. And then the same chef who hired me in Miami, who hired me in New York, I got a phone call and he's like, hey, I'm opening a resort in California. You want to come? Absolutely, let's go. So we opened a resort called Terranea. Um, uh, I'm sorry, this is such a long story. This is my work history. We opened a resort called Terranea. This is still on the tail end of the market crash, the real estate crash. This is like 2009 ish, and super luxury resort, beautiful property in Rancho Palos Verde, Southern California, and we're opening up at the worst time possible.
Yeah.
And we opened up to crazy busy ridiculousness because we opened up in a community. It wasn't like we were in a resort area and there's nothing but other hotels. We were one of the only hotels, resorts, and we had, I think, 9 restaurants there. But for the community that surrounded, we were the best dining options for 30 miles.
Hmm.
So whereas we didn't sell a lot of hotel rooms, the food and beverage that we did kind of floated the whole hotel.
Hmm.
Like the restaurant I was in charge of was only built to do like 100 covers a day, and we were doing 900 covers a day.
Jeez.
So yeah, so I mean, a lot of lessons learned there. That was also a very humbling experience. I had to humble myself again because I'm coming from a more fine dining upscale uh, pedigree of restaurants, and then the restaurant I went into there was straight up casual.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do it. I kept trying to make it more than what it was supposed to be. And every time I did that, I would fail. So I had to learn to be like, all right, I have to operate in the parameters that I'm in. Because if I overcomplicate things, I'm going to disturb the service.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't want to
Not gonna
wait
work.
45 minutes for their food in this type of restaurant. You
Right.
know, I don't have the space, equipment, or staff that can do the kind of food I wanted to do. So I had to learn to keep it simple and push it out. And I had to learn how to do volume with quality fast. And the lessons I learned there has helped me even to today.
Okay.
And I worked there for about 2 years, and then I got to Houston. I was in Houston briefly at the Hotel Icon, the same company that owned the Terranea owned that. And then while I was there to like an intern. I was just supposed to help out. I was supposed to be there for a couple of weeks and go back to California, and I never went back to California. While I was there, a position became available at the Driscoll in Austin, and I interviewed for it. I got the position. I told my wife to pack up the house. I flew back to California, and we drove a U-Haul back to Texas. We've been in Texas now for 8 years. The original question that got to this is how I ended up on CHOP. In so to answer that question that went on this 20-minute tirade is that my last year of working at the Driscolls, I was there for 4 years. Chopped was interviewing for contestants in the hotel.
Oh, wow.
So they were having people come there to interview, right? At this point in my career, I had several opportunities to be on TV, and it just didn't interest me. I didn't think I really needed it. I was doing very well for myself, right? So although they're interviewing people for it, I never applied to be an applicant. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And then on the last day of interviewing, our director of marketing was like, hey, they're interviewing in our house.
Yeah, why
You
don't you
should
do it?
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have the personality for it. You should go do it. So and that wasn't a suggestion. That was a, hey, go do it
Go
type
do it.
situation. So I go and interview with them. And for 45 minutes, they're asking me questions. I am not answering any of them. I am just dicking around, basically. I made fun of the interviewees for 45 minutes. And for some reason, they like that. And they shot me to the top of the list. Right. So there's a few more rounds of casting. But for whatever reason, I don't make it on the show. Right. So fine. Like I didn't care. I wasn't butthurt. I just kept it pushing. I transferred to the Derrick Hotel in Houston. I'm there for 4 years. Um, uh, and in the end of my 4 years there, I'm just hating life. I don't like working in hotels anymore. I don't like the political stuff that comes working in hotels.
Hmm.
They gave me a list of goals they wanted me to achieve when I first started working there, and I achieved them all like in my first year, right? Like, and everything I was doing food wise, I was winning because in Houston's a great food scene, but I think they're a couple years behind the rest of the country. And
I would agree.
so I was doing stuff that I was doing in New York, I was doing in Vegas, I saw in LA, and they hadn't seen them here yet in Houston. So literally every time I changed my menu, I was on the local news. I was,
Something new, different.
getting all this praise. Huh?
Something new and
Yeah.
different.
So
And yeah.
yeah, and then but at the same time, at this point, I'm the youngest executive chef in the company, and they were treating me as though I didn't earn this, and I had to fight for every single thing that I wanted to do, even though I hadn't failed yet. You know what I'm saying? Like everything I was suggesting was working. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, why am I arguing with the director of housekeeping on what I put on my menu? You know what I'm saying? It's like he's an expert in pillows. I am an expert in food. I shouldn't have to go through an entire executive committee of people who aren't experts in food to change a salad on my menu. And I was just getting frustrated, and they were getting frustrated with me because it was like, I got to a point where I allowed that behavior for 3 years, and on year 4 I wasn't allowing it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, I am not going back and forth with a committee of 12 over soup. You know what I'm
Jeez,
saying? Yeah,
crazy.
it was just this wasn't working anymore. So I'm at my wit's end. I get a casting call um, from Chopped
Out of
as
the
I had been
blue, they're
getting
like, "Oh
one for
yeah, 4 years ago we liked you. You want to
no
give
no
it
no no.
another shot?"
Once you make it to a certain point, you get a casting call every 6 months.
Oh, cool.
Right. So yeah, so I would get a casting call, I would delete them. I got that casting call. I deleted it as per usual. A local food writer in Houston was like, hey, they're casting in Houston, and I think you'd be good for it. You should apply. So I said, all right, I don't believe in coincidences. So I said, uh, let
Give
me
it a shot.
reply to the casting call they sent me. So I did that. They called me like the next day, and they said, hey, let's set up a Zoom call. So I set up the Zoom call. What was it? Was it Zoom? No,
Probably not.
what was before Zoom? Huh?
There was a bunch of them before. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go-to
whatever it
meeting.
was.
Go-to.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, whatever it was. Um, when I log on to it, guess who's behind the camera? The same two people I made fun of for 45 minutes 4 years ago. They
And did they hold
remembered
that
me.
against you, or did they think it was funny and they liked you?
No, no, I wasn't rude. I was just being you've
Just being
experienced
you.
me. I was being me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they said, oh, we remember you. And I kid you not, it wasn't a 2-minute interview, and then they forwarded me to the final executive casting producer,
Nice.
and I had an interview with him, and they were like, all right, here are the dates, this is what we want to do, blah blah blah. I go back to my job and say, hey, this is what's happening with Chopped. They want me to do the show, blah blah blah. And their response was, no, we don't want you to do it. And I was like, why? And they said, what if you lose? I'm like, what if I win? And they were like, no, it'd be bad publicity if the hotel if you lost. So I came home, spoke to my wife about it, and I quit my job. I did Chop 2 weeks later, and I won, and I started Craft Burger.
All right.
So
Well,
remember 30 minutes ago when you asked me that question?
yeah.
Boom, there we go.
Well, that was I knew a little bit of that, but wow, yeah, I didn't know quite a bit of that. So thanks for sharing. But you did kind of just jump from winning that to starting Craft. So was Craft a concept that you had thought of for a long time, and then what was its first iteration? Was the food truck the first iteration?
Yeah, so it was something towards like my last maybe 6 months of working at the hotel. I was like, yo, I got to figure out what's next, because this just isn't it anymore for me. I just reached that point. You know what it was? I was starting to listen to a lot of entrepreneur like podcasts and just other entrepreneurs. And what I realized, and what I was very soon going to be going through, is that you can work for somebody for years, you can produce everything they want. As soon as the tide changes, they will get rid of you in a second. You know what I'm saying? Everything's about what have you done for me lately.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, all right, my kids are only getting older. My son wasn't a teenager yet, but he was getting into those teenage years. And I was like, this is the time that my kids are going to be needing me the most. And I'm devoting way too much time to a job that, I mean, they proved it. They really didn't care about me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I was dedicating my life to it, and I was just another employee to them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to figure something out. So I started, tossing around the idea of opening a restaurant. I started working on a business plan, and when I got to the financials of seeing how much it would cost for me to start a restaurant,
Yeah.
I
Been
said,
there.
I could get the money, but then I would be an employee to my investors. I said I just didn't want that.
Yeah.
So I then started like, this is like the food truck boom was booming in Houston, and I said I should do a food truck. And the cost for me to open a food truck was very low, like 50 grand is what it cost me. My investment for a food truck was $50,000, and I found an investor who gave me $50,000. I didn't even have to use my own money. So we started with a food truck. But when I filmed Chopped, we watched my episode of Chopped. There's a part of me like on a food truck
Yeah.
that was not my food truck.
Oh,
It was a
really?
fake it till you, yeah, it was a fake it till you make it scenario, traditional Jersey style. I had to borrow a friend's food truck, and when I was actually on Chopped, the only thing I had for Craft Burger was the name. Hadn't come up with a logo yet, didn't write a menu yet, nothing. So after I went on the show and won, that's when I'm like, all right, we got a couple months to get this together
Yeah.
before the episode airs. And it took what did it take, 6 months to get the episode before the episode aired. And in that 6 month period, we built out the truck, wrote the menu, designed the logo, did everything we needed to do to get the business up and going.
So by the time the show aired, you were already out on the street.
It was literally my grand opening, just I was gonna say magically aligned, but it was, I think it was God, that like my grand opening and the show airing was at the same exact time.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I couldn't have had a better grand opening than that.
From all of your culinary experience, all your hotels, all your high-end experience to open and to get the idea on Craft Burger, how did you end up, doing the burger concept, from all of your your tremendous experience and that you've had through all your different places? How did you end up
How'd you pick a
deciding?
burger?
Yeah, how did you figure out that it was going to be a burger concept that was going to springboard you?
You know, I say probably the 3 or 4 years before that, I just started like getting a lot of press for burgers that I had done,
at the hotel.
and I felt it was a natural progression. Also, too, just knowing the industry, burgers are the number one selling food category in America, and I said, all right, if I'm going to leave a well-paying hotel job, I wanted something that was, in my mind, a no-brainer.
Hmm.
Like, especially at that time, I've seen mediocre hamburger places stay in business for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I figured if I could do gourmet burgers and do it well, I would be fine. So it
And
really it really just
proved to be
came down
true.
to,
Proved to be
huh?
true. Is it proved to be a good choice?
Yeah.
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 That's awesome.
Yeah.
So from there, how long was it before you? I'd obviously heard about your food truck when we were developing the food hall, and that's how we met. It was that the first thing you did from there? Was get into the food hall, because it seems like you've done so much in the last few years.
So yeah, I went from a food truck that roamed the streets of Houston, and then which was very difficult. Like I didn't realize
I bet.
how difficult the food truck world was. In my first year, I had to replace my engine 3 times. I had to
Jeez.
do the transmission once. Had to do the whole brake system once. Um, in my first year, I probably lost $100,000 in
You
jobs
worked
that
your
I
ass
couldn't
off.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? To
Mhm.
because my truck was always breaking down. So fortunately, I had these guys who had a food truck park in Magnolia, Texas, like by the Woodlands, called Deacon Baldy's, and they said, "Hey, we'd love to have you open a food truck park," which was new. And they were like, "We want to have you be one of our main food trucks." And I came out there and I saw the place. And I said, yeah, this is going to be big. And I was fortunate enough to bring my food truck there and park it in one spot and didn't have to. And I mean, the revenue that we did there, feeding all like families, like, and out there, the average family size is like 5 people,
Big.
4 to 5 people everywhere else. The average family over there is like 6, 8 people. The people have like 6 kids, no problem. And I did crazy revenue over there. Like when I told other food truckers how much revenue I was doing there a year, they're like, you're lying. Like that doesn't happen. I was doing $500,000 off my food truck
Yeah.
at this beer garden.
Very, very hard.
Um, yeah, and then I was able to once I saw the demand, because what happened was I was doing so great there, but people still wanted my truck in other parts of the city. So I said, all right, it's time for me to build a second one. But this time I said, I'm gonna build a trailer so I have less
Yeah.
mechanical issues. So I had a trailer, and then I was still doing that, and then I also found another food truck park to go to. So we were doing two food truck parks, and then after the second food truck park is when I got in contact with you guys, and then we ended up selling the first the first food truck, and then the second truck we started. All right, we're gonna consolidate our efforts and just use it for catering and focus on the food hall.
Has that, well, obviously the world's changed since then. I mean, catering has kind of dried up, obviously, in the last year. So, but you still
Not
have
really.
really,
I did more catering in 2020 than I did in 2019.
really,
Real.
that's
Yeah, my catering
incredible.
revenue. You
Hmm.
know what it was? It was more smaller caterings,
Yeah.
a few large corporate caterings. So all right, I catered less events, but uh I had bigger ones.
Hmm.
Um what's ended up like, and then like, they were more priced. Like I would do like corporate parties where they want to individually package, socially distanced uh events. Like I think one of the more recent ones I did a drive-in movie theater where the people that came in, they all watched the movie from their car, and we brought food to them.
Oh, wow.
So 2020, one of the biggest things I saw people. And like you said, I had so much going on. I got so much was to pivot. Like you can't keep doing what you were doing. Like pivot. So I started coming up with different catering menus that would appeal to other to a broader audience,
Yeah.
and not just doing burgers. You know what I'm saying? Like I know how to smoke. So we did barbecue. My
Mhm.
wife's Caribbean, did Jamaican food. Like whatever it was, we did more. And then also doing cooking classes, you know. So when I say my catering, all that stuff was involved with catering. Like I took on bigger clients. Like I've done cooking demos and cooking classes for Google, and like I have some more. I'm doing a cooking demo for Google um, on this Thursday coming up. So when I say my catering increased, it also includes stuff like that.
Yeah. So do you run that out of your, obviously you've got, a couple different locations now. So you got a group of folks. Does everybody kind of cross train and you just bring folks from everywhere to meet the need of the day? Or
Yeah,
how do you do that?
yeah. So one of my big things goals from 2020 was to make sure I provided income for my staff.
Yeah.
So that meant that, like I said, as I diversified, they had to diversify too. So they work at the restaurant. You know, some days they're on the food truck. Some days they're helping us do catering. Some days we're doing meal prep. Like we're all in it. We're all doing as much as we can.
I'm sure your employees probably enjoy that, right? They're not getting
It's
stuck
different.
doing the same thing, going to the same
Yeah,
place every day.
and
There's a
and
freshness.
yeah, and they're learning. It's not like just flipping burgers every day. Like I mean, they've participated in pulling off high end weddings, and these are cooks that, like, you know, at their current state of experience, wouldn't be exposed to some of the things that they're exposed to.
Yeah. So that all that opportunity allows you to provide, you're providing helping provide futures for people if they want it, right? You're teaching them a lot of different things
Absolutely.
and, learning them, well, much like you did, right? You learn the business by doing it and being exposed to different things. So that's awesome.
Yeah, my guys are not going to be stuck when they're done working with me. It's like they're not going to have to go from a burger restaurant to a burger restaurant. They can
You
go on
think
and do more
your
stuff.
background in dealing with, the people who, sometimes we learn a lot from the bad experiences that we went through and the bad
Yeah,
management. I think it only all of us realize that if you ever were working for a bad manager, that you were not going to be that person. You were going to do things differently. I would assume your experience has led you to your current management style and how you treat and interact with people. I heard you earlier say, some of the people weren't nice people or didn't treat people well. Andy and I,
yeah,
we always talk about, you treat, obviously how you treat people is vitally important in this world, especially your employees. So it sounds like you took all the things that you learned from all of your stops along the way to really mold you into the leader that you are today.
absolutely. I definitely try and I definitely try and follow the path of the good managers I've had. Like, you know, and even in those high stakes, you know, luxury fine dining restaurants, I had extremely talented chefs that didn't raise their voice, who didn't curse at you, who didn't throw things. Like that wasn't their management style, you know what I'm saying? And that's not my style. Like, you know, I'm not gonna raise my voice, I'm not gonna yell at you. If I have an employee who can't do a job, it's probably my fault. It's either I didn't spend enough time training you, or I hired you for a position you weren't qualified for yet. You know what I'm saying? So unless you just refuse to do something that you can do, it's probably my fault.
Yeah.
So I always, before I react, I try and look inward and say, all right, what did I do wrong here?
Yeah.
You
I,
know,
I,
and
I
then
absolutely love that frame of view. I don't think I actually did that well until, I don't know, maybe a few years ago. I read an amazing book not that long ago that just made that all make sense to me. It's called Extreme Ownership. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, Shannon, but that's
no,
basically what it is. It's like, you know what? if there's a circumstance, it's likely because you didn't train the person well. If they're not doing something that you need them to do, you need to realize that it probably, the responsibility is probably you. And if you take that attitude, even if it's not, it kind of forces you to go the extra mile to do what you need to do to take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we talked about an awful lot of stuff there. So your career, you got the food trucks, and then obviously we're going to talk about food halls for a minute, because obviously the food hall experience has been a very challenging. We opened a food hall in downtown in downtown Houston in an office environment. And of course, obviously,
Mhm.
the office environment's been completely decimated. Not long
Yeah,
after it opened, it was went away. So there's a lot of food halls still being discussed around the country. Much that you'd probably be surprised. There's people that are still really thinking about doing a lot of food halls, and 9 times out of 10, I'm kind of telling people maybe that's not the best idea.
yeah,
We've been doing a lot of focusing on doing financial examinations, kind of site examinations about what should be on a property. And in most cases, the answer, in my view anyways, is not a food hall, largely from the experience of being involved with a Finn Hall in Houston. It was just much harder to operate it than I think they anticipated. Leadership has to be spot on awesome to do that. And it's my view that you can't view a food hall as a real estate endeavor, and that if you're going to operate a food hall, not only do you have to get a bunch of good operators like yourself, but you have to operate it as you were operating a restaurant. Earning the meals one plate at a time, and taking responsibility for the overall operation of the facility. So obviously Finn Hall has not come back, and from that, and obviously it won't, or anytime soon. With the amount of
yeah.
lack of people downtown in those environments. Um, you recently opened, and we can pause there if there's something you wanted to add about that. But it seems like right now it's kind of at a pause. Is that
Yeah.
a kind of the current
Yeah,
atmosphere
it's
there?
definitely like I've temporarily closed my restaurant there, and I'm waiting to see more activity downtown. They're
Yeah,
doing a lot,
they're
the
trying.
management there to bring more people back to Finn Hall.
Yeah,
There is an uptick in people coming back into the offices, but like to me, there's not enough. Like I held on and broke even uh for as long as I could at Finn
yeah,
Hall. And now that I have my new restaurant, it's like if I can't make a profit, then I'm not doing it. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? It's like it just won't make it just doesn't make any sense to me to put myself in a situation where I stand to probably lose money.
yeah,
Um uh where even like in my restaurant, my operating cost is way less than it is at Finn Hall.
yep.
So it's like it doesn't make sense for me to go back into a food hall situation right now. But I'm leaving that door open. They want me back. If the opportunity for me to make money there comes again, I'll be right back because I did make money at Fit Hall.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll bounce back, at some point. The future of food halls, we've had a number of conversations about that, and had a number of interviews. And as I said, we've been working on a bunch of different projects that are in different kinds of places. My personal opinion is they have to really be rethought as to where their locations are, with the shifting populations toward more homework, which I'm a firm believer will stay. I've always worked at home, so, or been remote. And so I think that the cat's out of the bag on that. And
Yeah,
even if the office space comes back pretty strong, my guess is it's going to be half of the amount of daily people in those environments. They'll be the flexible workforce will come in and out of those office environments. So when you think about the area around Finn Hall, which I think is a great example of a lot of urban environments, there's millions of square feet of office space within 2 blocks of Finn Hall. And even at that
yeah,
level, even when it was full, it was hard to make the numbers work. And And that was a big eye opener, for me to think about, wow, with the amount of people there are in such close proximity with relatively small competition, just very difficult for those numbers, to get enough volume, not enough individuals through the door to make all the
Yeah,
operators be profitable. And you were
yeah,
obviously one of the higher, one of the higher sales folks, probably number one for most of the time you were there. You're probably the whole time. So if you're not able to make it, that tells you that no one can, right? With the
yeah.
amount of stuff going on. So you opened a brick and mortar store not long ago. Tell us a little bit about that. Then I also want to talk about the Ghost brand, the Ghost Kitchen brand specifically, and how that's going, what the unit economics are there, and what your thoughts are on expanding through that channel.
Well, we start with the Ghost Kitchen first because the Ghost Kitchen
Okay.
led to my restaurant I've opened in the suburbs.
Yep.
So while I was at Finn Hall right after, like right as the pandemic hit and we had to shut down in Houston, we had like a 2-week shutdown in
Yeah.
Houston. During that period of time, I got a call from the Ghost Cloud Kitchen, which is a ghost kitchen,
Brand.
and they were asking, like, hey, would you be interested in doing coming over here? They explained the whole concept of how it goes. It's a virtual restaurant. There's no front of the house staff. You need very minimal staff. Everything is to go. This is the future of restaurants. I was like, yes, sounds very intriguing. So I went in. I went in. I spoke with them, and I got more information. And they said, look, I was very skeptical, but I was like, I also want to try this. So they gave me a sweetheart deal. They said, look, we'll let you operate in here for 3 months for free. At the end of that 3 months,
Give it a
if you
shot.
don't like it, you can leave. Yeah, right. So I did it, and we experienced some success. We saw the areas where it could be difficult to make money, and uh, we saw some good and some bad in that 3 month period. But what I learned in that 3 month period is diversifying, you know, running the ghost brands, having different brands come out of one kitchen.
Yeah.
From that, we developed different brands that we could sell out of one kitchen using the same labor force, using the same ingredients.
Mhm.
And what I realized and what I have been realizing from our time at Finn Hall was a ghost kitchen and a cloud kitchen. I think they're great for people who are starting new, or don't have the capital to open a restaurant or maybe even a food truck because the cost to get in is very
Really
low.
low. Yeah.
Yeah, but the majority, all of your revenue comes from third party delivery sites. You know what I'm saying? So you're from the very top, you're giving away 30% of your revenue. So if your food costs is in the 30s, your labor is in the 30s, and you're giving away 30 to the third party delivery sites
Nothing left.
in a
I love
perfectly ran restaurant with no waste of labor or food, you only have 10% of profit. And that's, if anything that this pandemic has taught us, is that restaurants can't run with such low um, profits. You have to have something that you can put away for a rainy day.
Well, you didn't mention
And
occupancy cost in those two either. So it's, so you got whatever they're charging you rent wise at
yeah,
that
for rent, yeah,
facility,
yeah,
you got occupancy on top of that. And if you had any capital expense, then there'd be that, right? So if you had, even if it's
yes,
low amount of money, you had to pull it from somewhere, right? So if you were taking that
yes.
cash that you could have done something else with, that's a capital expense, whether it's a payment or not, you know.
So for me, I was fortunate. My investor had another restaurant in Houston, and it didn't do well, and he had me take it over. And then he said, "You know what? We're gonna close it." And he gave me all the equipment, front
Yeah.
of the house and back house. So when the cloud kitchen came around, I had a full kitchen's equipment. It didn't cost me anything.
Wow.
So that made it easier for me. But like, so my 3 months goes, and I'm seeing that my revenues are just very inconsistent. You know, And I can see that long term, one of the big things for the cloud kitchen that I was in is that it's by U of H, it's by TSU, it's in the third ward area, so you get the medical district downtown, and midtown. But with the pandemic going on a lot longer than any of us thought it would, who are you delivering to? There's no one at TSU. There's no one at U of H. People aren't working in the business downtown. So your numbers just kept going down and down and down. So then, they were trying to get me to sign a longer contract. And at first I was like, because there was a point where I was making more revenue there than I was at Finn Hall.
Yeah.
Because Finn Hall, like I said, there's no workforce down there.
Yeah.
And so I said, maybe this is how I transition out of Finn Hall. And then the people I was dealing with that were operating the Finn Hall, they started to get sketchy. Like their numbers kept changing. Like, all right, we're gonna charge you this for rent.
Yeah.
We'd agree upon it. Then someone else would say, hey, we can't do that. We need to charge you this for rent. And then I was like, well, that's not what you said. And then someone else would say, all right, we're gonna charge you this for rent, but we need a $10,000 deposit. Why would I give you that? You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying? Why would I give you the capital, which is so hard for me to come by right now?
Yeah.
Why would I give you that? That doesn't make any sense, right? So we kept going back and forth. And the same thing at Finn Hall is there. I'm their number one. No one's producing more revenue than me right now. And I was like, you guys need me here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you need me here. And I just had like a moment of awareness, self-awareness, where I was like, a lot of these places need me more than I need them. Their biggest thing is that they provide you the shell. They take on the cost of building it out, where all you have to do is bring in your equipment, pay for your permits, and now you can operate, right? I'm at a place to where I can get capital on my own. You know what I'm saying? So I don't need you to build me out of place. I don't need you to put in the systems for me. I can do that myself. So from that ghost kitchen, I said, you know what, Shannen? I need to find my own kitchen, my own space, my own brick and mortar space that I can operate the same way I'd operate a ghost kitchen. Plus, I had the benefit of having whatever revenue walks in the door.
Yeah.
And from that led me to find the space that I have now. It's a small space. My restaurant's only 1,200 square feet.
Oh, wow.
There's only 50 seats in there.
You have 50 seats and 1,200 square feet. That's quite a feat.
Yeah. Socially distanced too. Well, you know what it is? I added a patio.
Okay. You're including that.
I added a patio. But it was a second generation restaurant to which I only had to put up a sign and paint the walls. Like that was it. I didn't have to do any major construction to it. And then my rent at this space is less than my rent at the ghost kitchen.
Wow.
So it was like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Like the financially, this made way more sense. So I didn't sign on for more time, and I took all my equipment that I already owned and put it there. And like I said, I inherited front of the house and back of the house equipment. So I was able to, like, my overall startup cost of going into this my new restaurant was less than half what I paid to start my first food truck.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
that was the route.
Yeah, I mean, it that's not surprising. And it's interesting that we got there. I don't know if you're thinking the same thing, Brian, but we had a pretty seasoned guy on with us last week. We were talking about that. This basically the same thing. He was operating a ghost kitchen that they developed out of their existing casual dining, one of their casual dining brands. I think they're starting to do it at some of his others as well. But in everyone I've spoken to, that is the model that's working. I have a friend who's a CEO of a pretty large company who's telling me that's what they're doing, basically, is rolling out a number of brands that they developed within. And what I guess it was a year ago when I started to kind of look into this topic, everyone was talking about generating demand for a ghost kitchen brand that nobody knows, which certainly is an issue. However, if you have any kind of a restaurant already, and you're able to start something else out of it, there's really no cost involved, or very little cost involved with it. So you have some time to develop, some brand awareness in other ways. So I'm interested to hear how people are developing demand out for, your, which I assume what you're going to say, you've done amazing chicken sandwiches. Are you doing those as a ghost brand kind of out of craft burger?
Absolutely. We have Thick Chick, which is our fried chicken brand. We
Yep.
also have Pecking Order,
What's
which I
that?
think before Pecking Order was actually something that was supposed to go in at Finn Hall.
I remember we talked about
Where
that, right? Yeah.
yeah, we were going to take over the Mala Szechuan
Yeah,
space
yeah,
and
yeah,
do a
yeah.
fried chicken there.
Okay.
And it didn't work out because they offered me a bogus deal
Yeah.
to do it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to give you
Why
this
would you
brand
do
for nothing.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're running both of those. And then we also run other burger brands. Like the whole thing is that I am finding ways to sell my same product different ways,
Other
you
burger
know?
brands. Talk about that.
So we have like Bentley burgers. It's like a higher, it's supposed to be a high-end burger concept, but it's really not much different from craft burger. But it just appeals to a different demographic of people.
Hmm.
Some of the stuff is crazy. I've had people who've ordered from Craft Burger and then ordered from another one of my brands and get the same meal and like, oh, this one was way like they'll I actually have someone who commented and recommended one of my brands over another one of my brands.
Did they even know that
You know
that's
what I'm
what
saying?
they were both? They didn't even know that they were both the
They
same.
didn't know. Like it's the same exact thing, man. you got the same chicken sandwich from both places,
That's awesome.
and and like one of the things that I learned from the whole cloud kitchen thing is sometimes it's better to not self promote.
Hmm.
You know, when something that's coming from me, Shannen Tune, the Chop Champion, their expectation is way higher. Like to the point for some people, it's impossible for me to meet their expectation because if they order a basic cheeseburger, they're expecting their mind to be blown by my basic cheeseburger. Now, if you order my truffle butter juicy Lucy, yeah, I can maybe give you that experiment. But if you order a meat and cheese cheeseburger, there's not
It's a
much. You're not giving
cheeseburger.
me room to. Yeah, I'm giving you great ingredients, fresh ingredients, but there's not much
Still a
room to
cheeseburger.
blow your mind. If you order it from Bentley Burger, you're not expecting. You're going to be surprised at the quality that you get.
How are you marketing your different brands?
Huh?
How do you market your different brands? Like how?
Some of them I don't at all. Like I just let them live on the
On a
on
third
the
party app.
third party
Third
apps
party
and just
okay.
and then just let them live there and uh they do the reviews. If the quality is good, people will give it high reviews. The more reviews you get, the more orders you'll get. So a lot of my other brands I don't market at all, and it's better for me not to.
That's very interesting. Yeah, yeah, I find that fascinating. So I mean, it's kind of cool. So it's you're marketing your main brand. You've got these other brands that live within. It sounds like you've got the one small facility. A large. Are you thinking about maybe obviously doing more locations because then you could do the same thing in other locations where you can reach other markets for the delivery with your
I
same
am
kind of
not right
program?
now. Yeah, I am not right now. I'm starting to focus on other things. Like one of the things that helped me survive 2020 is I started doing some consulting.
Hmm.
So like there's a brand in Houston called Texas style Philadelphia cheesesteaks, and I consulted with them and I curated a whole menu selection. So where if you were to go into a Texadelphia right now, there's a Shannen Tune section of their menu. And I started doing that with other brands. And then I hired a marketing manager, and I've also been doing other like pop-ups with other well-known Houston chefs. And collectively, we decided to start our own hospitality consulting group.
Hmm.
And I think that is a direction that I want to go. Because like to me, it's like I have 20 plus years of expertise in food and beverage, and I'm like, I don't want to split burgers for the next 20 years of my life. I want to do something. I want to do something else, and I think this is what's going to be next for us is uh, consulting. And I just, you know, what it is just like, you know, I made more money selling my thoughts and ideas than I did selling burgers last year. And I think that, you know, this pandemic taught me if it happened once, it can happen again. And I need to be in a situation to where I find I have other ways of making revenue besides just selling uh, burgers or food.
Yeah.
Sell my intellectual property.
Well, I think that goes to your, you know, it's proven by what you've done, right? You're pivoting in a bunch of different
Yeah.
areas. You've got a bunch of different channels that you're working. I'm going to talk to you about the consulting world. It's awesome, but it's also gig work, and you know, it's funny because you know we always talk about.
Yeah.
You know, I do a lot of consulting, obviously, and always have, but I'm always looking to do some of the things that you've done with being involved day to day on some operations as well, because consulting gigs go up and down. You can do really well, or
Yeah.
you can, it can be more of a challenge. So that's interesting.
Well,
But
one of the things I realized is that I said I will always have from this point out a restaurant. Like
mhm,
I'm not gonna stop doing craft burger,
good.
but it's to me it's like in 10 years I want to grow craft burger to I want to have multiple locations and I want to be able to sell it. I
Yeah,
want to be able to sell craft because here's the great thing about me is like you know how long it took me to write craft burgers menu.
I'm guessing
15
not
minutes.
long. Yeah,
30
15,
minutes.
15 minutes and
15.
I was 15 minutes.
Yeah, you knew
uh
what you wanted to do.
uh thick thick chick took less.
Yeah,
Pecking order took less. You know what I'm saying? It's like that creativity part of writing a menu, putting everything together for it comes easy to me. You know what I'm saying? So I can sell craft burger and make another craft burger. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Uh, so it's like, uh I I want to do other things. I was actually pre pandemic. I was going to open Craft Grill, which is another concept I'm working on, where it's a more upscale craft burger, where it's not just burgers, it's steaks, chops, seafood, like an extension of the brand. And
wow, that's
so like
awesome.
I will still have restaurants, but I also want to be able to consult and help other entrepreneurs develop their brands. This is like I'm even like the stuff I did for Texadelphia. I was shocked how easy that went because I thought it'd be harder than what it was. But
Yeah,
then my marketing manager pointed out, like, yo, this is what you're good at. Like you're not good at like you're good at flipping burgers, but that's not the gift that you have. Your gift is that you can walk in, see an operation, and see what they can do better. Like the very first time I walked into a Texadelphia kitchen, I knew what to do next.
yeah.
And that was what I did and what I sold them.
Yeah, you may be surprised to know that I've actually cooked cajillion cheesesteaks in my life. I used to work at a cheesesteak place. It was one of the funnest jobs I ever had. We cooked cheesesteaks all day long. It's where I met my wife, and still have her. So
Oh wow.
yeah, cheesesteaks are in my blood. But well, Dude, we've kept you like for a freaking long time today, and I really appreciate all your time. It's really been really interesting to hear about all the different stuff you got going on, and I want to invite you back sometime before long. We can talk again. I'm real interested in your how you develop the craft burger brand. You just said you would want to develop it into something, I think, which I think is very smart because obviously you've done it well. If you can do that along with that ghost kitchen as part of the soup. You know,
Yeah,
I'm not really hearing anybody talking about that right now, which I found, which I think is interesting. So, you know, if you most people are so focused on whatever brand they're doing, rightly so, they want to make sure they're doing whatever they're doing well. But if you were to come out with a, hey, here's our brand, it also includes these elements that go with it, and you had a strong brand name for craft burger, and you're able to develop it, I would be very surprised if you couldn't find a lot of capital to grow that brand pretty quickly. You know, especially since if
yeah,
you've got a couple of them working, that's really all you need. You know, for some major investment. Okay, let's build a shit ton of these in a quick hurry. You know, and put them all over, which would be your dream of having something worth selling, or maybe even passing it down to your family, as you go, your kids, or a legacy to provide a living for them,
absolutely. The offers have come, um, uh, especially in the last maybe 6 months, because
Yeah.
people are amazed that we're still here.
Yeah.
Like, how did you survive this? Especially where we were convened downtown. Like, how did you survive this? And one thing I've told other entrepreneurs is like, I think we all had more time in 2020 than we've had in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, when we had our first shutdown here in Houston, I had 2 weeks to think. And instead of panicking, I thought and I prayed. I said, I came up with several plans. I said, here are 10 things that I want to try. I tried all 10 things. 8 of them stuck. Like, 8 of them became profitable and 8 of them became different streams of revenue.
Yeah.
And I was just like, if you're a creator, this is the time to create.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to. There's a solution to every problem. There's a plan for everything. Like, you have to just take the time and figure out what's gonna work for you. And I was able to do that with the help of my wife, because she was a part of it as she is of everything else, to figure out what we were going to do next, and then we just had to execute. And then I surrounded myself with other creators. Like I said, during this time when I had less revenue walking in the door, I hired a director of marketing,
Yeah.
someone who knows how to market my ideas. I surrounded myself with other creative chefs who also were finding ways to be profitable during this time and doing pop-ups. Like, we were walking into restaurants who had huge event spaces and said, all right, you're not filling this space. Give it to us.
Let us do
Give it to me
something.
every Saturday, and I'll do an event here and I'll give you a piece of that. And it works. Like, all these things work, especially in Houston. It's a city that's open. People want to do stuff, and there were limited options. And we said, all right, we'll figure it out. Give us your 3,000 square foot, and we'll fill it up with people, and we'll split the bar revenue. And people did it, and it worked.
Dag, that's awesome. Uh, I think everything you just said is probably a good place to stop, because it's like you're doing an awful lot. Your advice is to get after it. Realize that right now is a great time to be thinking about how that, and you don't know what's going to happen if you tilt until you go try it. But go try it.
Yeah,
Get other revenue options going. You get other channels going. Whatever kind of business that you're in the restaurant industry, there's a ton of opportunity out there. Right now we're going into a time where there's going to be a huge amount of awesome real estate available. If we're able to come after it with great ideas on here's what to do with this and how to make that happen. So a bunch of people that are sitting there with properties they're just dying for someone to come up and figure out a way to make money out of it. And so
yeah.
opportunities are everywhere. Well, good to have you today, Shannon. I really appreciate we've kept you for a lot longer than I thought. It was because you were so interesting to talk to. So, I
No
loved
problem.
hearing your story is even more than I knew, and glad to have met you when we did, and hope to continue to. I will definitely be a fan and follow along with what you're doing. Love to have you back. Maybe in a couple months, we'll catch up with what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, tell your
Appreciate
wife, who is awesome. We didn't even get a chance to talk about your awesome family. I happen to know you have an amazing family that supports you and everything, and what an amazing partner that you have in life. And congratulations for for all your success lately. It's been awesome to watch you from afar.
Thank you, Matt. I lucked up marrying a chef. You know, uh,
Always good to
the
marry
chef
above your
duo.
grade, right? Brian and
Yeah,
I
man.
talk about that often.
that. Absolutely.
I always tell her she rolled the dice with me. I knew I was getting something good.
Yeah.
She didn't know what she
Awesome.
was getting.
Well, take care,
Absolutely.
Shannon. With that, we will let you
Got
go.
a nice meeting you.
Thanks, brother.
All right, guys. You guys have a good one.
You
You
too, man.
too.
Stay
Thanks.
Take
warm.
care. Wow. Well, there was an awful lot there with Shannon.
A lot of content right there, buddy. A lot of
Damn, the guy's
content.
just got so much going on. That's why I wanted, him to join us today, was because he's so he's so amazing. Like, he's just got so much. He's very inspirational because he's just getting after it. Watching him
Mhm.
every couple of months or something, comes out. The dude is always on, like, doing a, they're running several concepts right now, and then he'll be like, well, we're doing a meal prep thing at somebody's house, like doing so you can hire him and his wife to come over and do dinner for you, which you'd kind of assume that there's no way that could happen, but that just tells you how hard the guys, working. Like, they're working it every day.
Yeah. Well, there are, I mean, you heard him mention, like, he wrote down, 10 things, 10 ideas going into 2020, and 8 of them were successful. 8 of the 10 are successful. And I think he's exactly 100% correct. I was going to say, as Mark Cuban said, like, this is one of the greatest times for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinking, because there are so many unknowns. There are so many, like you were mentioning just a few minutes ago, how many spaces are out there,
Yeah.
and what on the real estate side, and who's going to be filling these locations, and how are those things going to go. So, I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity coming up, as we, kind of work our way through, and hopefully to the end of this pandemic for everybody's sake. But yeah, he's very inspirational. I think it's, it's almost like an American success story. Guy starts, really just at the bottom level, and one job at a time,
At
like
a
you talk about
hotel, in a hotel
plate at a
kitchen.
time. Yeah, hotel kitchens, going from one to other. Everything that he did along the path got him to where he is today. And I think that's a wonderful thing. He's a wonderful person to talk to, and I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, he's like the ideal food hall operator. You and I talk a lot about food halls, obviously, because we started to get involved in them, and people are now starting to kind of emerge, with food hall potentials or properties that they're thinking about. I'm looking at a couple of them, right now. One really large one is out of the blue. We both got contacted by someone who's kind of doing a very small version. My reaction to them was, well, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. We really need to look at it closely to make sure that that's the best use of that property, for food and beverage, because there's just so many different options right now, which is awesome, right? I mean, you could use part of spaces as an amazing pop-up. You could, build an amazing drinking establishment and have different pop-up environments in that
Yeah.
small one that I'm talking about, that we were both looking at recently. It's kind of what I was wondering. I was like, I wonder if that would be a better option, to meet the need of what that facility is. And you need people like him that can do that, right? So you might have an operator or two, of his kind of caliber, that can handle more than just making, one thing. And
Right.
so that's awesome. Well, Brian, we've had a good conversation today. Good to see you as well, my friend.
Yeah.
Next week, we have an amazing guy who's going to join us, and it's Chris Moran, and he's probably one of the smartest guys I know, so it'll be interesting to have him on. So good to see you, my
Great
friend,
time. Cool.
and we will